This session is all about, in particular, looking at how fintech solutions can best help government payments. So what are the opportunities and what are the barriers to adoption of fintech solutions that can help government payments? And I think quite often when we talk about government payments and fintech, we're talking about payments out. So for example, during COVID, how did government help to get payments out to citizens? But in this session, I think we're going to concentrate as much, if not more, on kind of what potential fintech solutions can help payments in to government, something that I think we don't hear that much of. So I've got two fantastic speakers with us here today. So really delighted to introduce Evelyn Liivamägi, who's Deputy Secretary General for Financial and Tax Policy at the Ministry of Finance here in Estonia. Really good to have you with us. And Dr. Mikhail Tulacek, who is Head of the General Tax Legislation Unit at the Finance Ministry in the Czech Republic. Great to have you with us here as well, Mikhail. And I might bring Ian in, you all know Ian by now, I might bring Ian in a minute on a specific example that actually was the kind of inspiration behind this session, so I might bring you in a minute. But first, Evelyn, over to you for your opening remarks.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure here to speak to you about a couple of examples Estonia has made to make tax paying very simple to taxpayers. And I prepared a couple of slides. Maybe it's easier to follow my talk then. And for introduction, we launched these services and solutions together with one traditional bank. But this cooperation became possible, I think, because this bank considers themselves technological company as much as a bank. So they have a fintech mindset. And with that kind of fintech mindset, innovation can be possible even together with traditional banks. And the first example, we call it business account. It's a new regime for new business models. It's a specific tax regime, and we introduced a new law. We didn't use the existing taxation rules, and it was because we saw that the new emerging business models like platform-based business, they didn't actually fit into the old rules. And we thought it's not wise to try to fit them into the old rules, but rather create new rules, something that people who are dealing in this area are expecting, because they saw tax paying very burdensome, and it resulted not paying tax. So while we see that if the tax paying is simple and unburdensome, it's much easier to pay taxes, and the voluntary tax compliance is much higher. So how does this business account model look like? The user only has to open a specific bank account in a bank. Nowadays it's only possible in one bank, but these services are developed as unique ones, so sorry, not unique, universal ones, so every bank or fintech company who wants to use it can implement those services. So, person opens a business account in a bank, and all the money that he or she earns from business activities will be transferred into this account. And that's all for the person. And now cooperation between bank and tax authority starts. Bank reserves 20%, that's the amount of tax liability, so 80% of the income is freely usable. Next month, bank transfers the 20% to the Tax and Customs Board on the due date where the tax has to be paid, and tax liability is met. There is no need to file tax return, there is no tax debt, and there is no need for accounting. Possible expenditures are considered already in the tax rate, because the tax rate is considerably lower than people usually have to pay when they earn income. So it's very simple. And it's becoming more and more popular. I think even there is only one bank that offers this service. Every month, more and more people start using it. And another example is something we did within the existing regulations. We didn't change the law. The law was there, but we thought how we can change the tax payment, not changing the tax rules. And this solution came from the idea that we wanted to make paying taxes and filing tax return as unburdensome as possible for taxpayers. And while the large taxpayers, they can use those X-road-based machine-machine connections, we can see that the smaller companies, they don't want to spend extra euros to build up those expensive connections. So we thought, what we can offer them. So the main idea is to get data directly from the source so that the taxpayers don't have to file separate documents. And we, that was not a discovery, we just opened our eyes and saw that where is the place where every company's accountant goes every month, and it's an e-bank. They use e-bank to pay out salaries. And so we, together with this bank, launched services that in the same time, when a company is paying out salaries, information is exchanged between bank and tax authority, and you can pay out salary, you can pay taxes and file tax return at the same time. And so it's very foggy here, but what a person has to do when they go to their bank, they have to, from the drop-down menu, choose a specific payment. It's called salary payment. They type in all the necessary data. The exchange of information is going to take place. Information from bank is sent to the tax authority. It takes some microseconds. And as a user, the time you are typing in the sum of the payment of the salary, you will see the amount of taxes you need to pay if you have paid out this salary. So you have the possibility, with the same click that you are affirming the salary payment, to send the taxes to Tax and Customs Board. And also the information about this payment is sent to the Tax and Customs Board, and tax return is pre-filled with this data. And so if there is nothing else, you have you haven't paid out, no, that's not the correct way to say, you haven't done any expenditures that is also taxable, you don't have to go to tax board next month, e-tax board, you don't have to file your tax return, it will be automatically there, it will be automatically affirmed. So if there is some extra information you have to file on your return, you can change it. But as a user, you are only operating in an e-bank environment, and you don't have to visit e-tax board. So we'll see that although e-tax board is very simple and comfortable, people still don't want to deal with tax board. So they are satisfied if they can do their things in e-bank, and so taxes are just automatically sent. Of course, this is nothing that is like a back door to a tax authority to get your money out of your account. The company has to submit an agreement in the environment of e-bank to use this solution. But this will be done automatically, and it's very easy. And of course, you can pay taxes using BankLink. In e-tax board environment, you can pay taxes with a credit card. You can order e-invoice to pay your land tax. And some people still use cash on the border if they have to pay customs duty, but almost everything can be done electronically here. So I will stop here. And
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Evelyn. I like the simple message of making tax paying more simple equals more compliance. I think that's something that a lot of people will have sympathy with. And just the way you've described there, how you've kind of gone to a process that works for people rather than trying to change the process that they do and build in your solutions into that process. I'm sure people have questions about that because some of that sounds almost too simple to be true.
Yeah, I know.
So it'll be interesting if people have questions about that in the end. Mikael, over to you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, as it's written, I'm a lawyer with a computer science background, so I really love definitions, and I'm kind of still struggling with the precise definition of fintech and what to include it or what not to include it, and which means I hope I will stay on topic and I will not describe something which is not fintech. With this said. We are, at least in Czech Republic, we have lots of plans what to introduce. However, there are not so many solutions which are already available. Or that was my original idea when I was preparing my talk. But as I'm hearing through the day, what can fintech offer to government or what can government offer to fintech? There are something which are worth to mention. But first of all, as was said, I will be talking only about the government payment to the state, not from the state. It's a completely different discipline. And also, I must make clear that these government payments, they are mostly taxes. But it's not only income tax. There are lots of taxes, VAT or administrative fees, and so on. And the possibilities which are available with these payments are mostly determined by the number of users, by the amount, and so on, basically to achieve as simple procedure as possible. This also means that the solutions which are sought by the government or the offices are in a way that they are trying to lower costs, lower costs, lower the people involved, and to introduce something which is really simple to achieve. Well, to be honest, we have big plans about big IT system for our taxes at our financial administration, but we are sort of vendor locked with our supplier, which we kind of struggle to replace. We have also problems with defining of the new IT system and so on. So we are kind of stuck with what was there. But still, if I will stick to the income tax, there was not always, but maybe from 90s, there was the possibility to file something electronically on the floppy disk and so on. It evolved. Nowadays, you can electronically fill information about all taxes. Also, the systems around it. Kind of against the underlying IT system, but evolved that we have something which can be which is similar to internet banking. You can log in, you can file a tax return, you can see all the information about the communications with the tax office, and also you can see your financial balance on the on your personal tax account. You can ask for you can claim overpayment to be returned to you, and so on. That's one solution which is shared across all taxes administered by financial administration. Also, we are trying to ease paying of the taxes for people, for example, by providing the QR code, which is, well, it's not a high-tech, cutting-edge technology, but still, it really helps people. With the more cutting-edge technology, which was really accelerated with the pandemic, it's using of the identity provided by banks. Nowadays, you can log in to this taxes tax administration website by using your bank identity, which is really nice, because before, well, we had an opportunity to create a login account at the post office, which also is nice, because post office is in every town and city, not only in large cities like tax offices. But still, nowadays, almost everybody who has a bank account can log into this system, have access to it. And not only to taxes, to all kinds of systems. During pandemic, it was mostly to the system for the vaccination and so on. So this is the small steps which are achievable despite the fact we are unable to produce a nice, great IT system. All of these things are kind of aligned with our regulation, because to be frank, there is not much need to any specific regulation for systems like that. But for example, some offices, now I'm moving to administrative fees. Some offices in the history even were faster than the regulation. Paying taxes by card, which, well, in the regular business, it's completely normal to pay something with card and so on. But in the government area, well, it's a huge affair, because you have to get a system, you have to do something about it, and in the past, there was a kind of problem that the taxes, which means also fees, were paid only when the money were physically on the bank account. Which, if you know how bank account, credit cards and debit cards works, is several days after, which is really a problem if you need to make something on spot. But still, this didn't prevent one of our offices, namely it was Land Register Office, which deals with lots and lots of these fees, which are quite high, to introduce this system, well, against the law. It was technically possible to have it, but it was kinda counter the law to provide the service just after the payment. The card was waived because they should have wait for the money. Why am I talking about it? From my perspective, it's interesting that you can achieve a lot of things if you don't go to the castle in the air. If you don't go for the whole IT system and wait for it. From the perspective of general business, these are maybe small steps, but they are really useful for the people. It's really the law generally don't stay. The law is normally not in the way of this. Sometimes it happens. We are trying to remove the obstacles. As I heard through the day, lots of the solutions which were here mentioned would be really nice also to achieve. I think my colleagues are also aiming for it. But some of them, I'm really afraid that we will not see them for many years, because it's in the public sector. It's really problematic to introduce something for just to test it if it will be okay or not. It's a great difference between us and the general business. I think I'm talking a little bit for long. Many other topics. Sorry, just to circling about this.
No, that's really, really interesting to hear. Very honest again, which I think is really nice from your perspective, where you sit, that some of those kind of legacy issues getting in the way maybe of the ambition that you would like to do. So as you mentioned there, kind of how do you even define fintech from where you sit? Some of those vendor locks, as you say, the suppliers that you locked into, preventing a kind of big overhaul of your kind of IT systems, and then those issues around kind of culture and an innovative mindset, which we've touched on today as well in the public sector. But despite that, you mentioned some of the things that you can do and that you have done in terms of payment solutions, so kind of providing the QR code and digital IDs provided by banks. So there are still things that you can do, even if you can't do everything that you want to do at the moment. So thank you. A really honest kind of presentation there. Ian, I'm going to ask you very quickly just to come and give the example from the HMRC in the UK as well.
No, thanks, Siobhan. Yeah, it was interesting, Michael, you were saying, you know, we first of all have to define what is a fintech solution before we then talk about the solution. This is just one example. I wanted to take this opportunity to promote on the global government fintech site. I'm conscious I'm not, obviously, clearly not representing the UK government, but this was an example that involves the UK government. Open banking for tax payments, a government case study, and this was actually partly the inspiration more broadly for today, actually, but also specifically for this session. And if I can ask, if we can just go to the next slide, so it says how the UK government is using open banking for tax payments. Part of today is all about kind of seeking specific examples of fintech solutions being used. This is one that is kind of on the site where we're seeking more, which is part of today's exercise. But the way we've kind of laid it out on the site is, what is the challenge? So we just lost it. Yeah, so what is the challenge? So the challenge is that the UK HMRC tax collection department wanted to improve its tax collection processes and make it easier for citizens to pay their tax. So one of the challenges is when people go to pay their tax, they maybe accidentally get the number wrong, or they copy the wrong numbers over for the 16 digits from their card, and they get the numbers wrong. So they ran a procurement process which was publicly listed as £3.1 million was the worth of the contract that I think runs for, I forget, at least 1 year. So it's a procurement they ran for a fintech solution. So very clearly it's for a fintech solution. My understanding is there were various bigger companies, bigger established financial institutions involved, but they chose to appoint a company called EcoSpend, which is based in London, describes itself as a fintech. Actually in the news early this week, so they've just been acquired by a Swedish firm called Trustly, which I think is a relatively well-known kind of open banking kind of fintech. And that procurement, I think, was run, we'll say, relatively quickly. They kind of moved from issuing the procurement notice to moving to the implementation of the solution. And so what that means is, if you're going to, they started with self-assessment for self-employed people who are looking to pay their tax. So you have to do that, I think, twice a year. So you go on to our equivalent of the example that Evelyn, the HMRC portal, to pay your tax. And there are various options. So you can either enter your debit card and put your numbers in, or this is very interesting for me, they didn't call it pay by open banking, because a lot of people don't know what open banking is. The very phrase open banking is the last thing a lot of people want their banking to be, is open. So they did some focus groups, and I think it's called pay by account, or pay by bank account. And so they started it with self-assessment a few months ago, and that was seen to be successful. So they've rolled it out to VAT, even corporation tax. So the numbers are kind of slowly mounting up in terms of the number of people that are opting to pay their taxes in the UK by open banking. So we've kind of set all this out on the site. I encourage you to look at it. We've laid out the challenge. We've presented the solution, which is this kind of fintech company that are providing the solution. We've laid out the results, which obviously we don't update them as regularly as we could, but the results when that was written were what they were, but I'm sure the numbers have increased by now. We give the global government verdict, which is kind of saying, as far as we believe, the UK HMRC was the first government in the world to embed open banking within its own operations for payments. And we also name the key players as well, so it's just a little name check for the people who've been involved in that. So I'm not sure whether we're doing tax by QR code yet, like the Czech Republic, but probably are, I don't know. But anyway, I just thought I would flag that example because we're all about trying to share concrete examples, and that is one of them. So
great.
Thanks for the opportunity to present that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ian. Before we go to questions from the floor, just one question that we had in advance that I'd like to put maybe to both of you, which is, do you think actually in this instance, in the instance of payments in to government, that actually here the biggest opportunities might not lie in central government, they might lie at local government level, and is that something that's being explored, or in different agencies outside kind of central government?
Estonia, in that way, I think 99% of Estonian taxes are state taxes that people pay, and the central government collects them. So, yeah, sure, you can pay taxes or other fees to the local government, but the amount of the total is so little.
Small.
Yeah, small. So a lot of local governments conclude agreements with Tax and Customs Board that the Tax and Customs Board collects also the local taxes instead of them. So it's wiser to do that because the system is already in place in Tax and Customs Board, and it's not efficient to build up the same system into a small local government.
Okay. Mika?
Well, I agree that it depends on the tax system and the structure and so on. In Czech Republic, it's also in a way that most of the taxes are collected by the state, since we are not federation and so on. But I can see some opportunity here with the tourist fees, because just now we are trying to get the information from the platforms like Airbnb and so on, and these platforms offers us to pay the taxes pay the fees for the tourists. So there could be some opportunity, but in a general amount of taxes paid, it's a small amount.
Right.
But it could be at least useful for these cities.
Okay. Questions from the floor. There must be questions on some of the examples that we had there. There was, yes, Doris. Karen, sorry.
Hi,
Over to you.
Vaughan. I think you really answered my question, or Ian rather answered my question from earlier, and this is, I find that as a government official, I'm getting unsolicited mail from tech companies telling me that they have a solution that will help government, and I'm afraid to talk to these companies because I'm afraid I'm going to not comply with procurement rules down the road. So just wondering, do other people here in the room have that same experience, and what advice do you have in terms of procurement? And I guess Ian might really have answered the question by saying that they ran a formal procurement process for the contract, and it's interesting that they've selected one supplier, and I'm just wondering, did you consider having a range of suppliers, and what I don't know if you're familiar with why this decision was to pick one supplier. Thanks.
Thanks. I'm going to come to Mika. You also said that sometimes, you said legislation maybe sometimes lags behind, or regulation lags behind. Have you encountered this issue as well, of kind of potential suppliers maybe being blocked out because people are worried about doing the wrong thing or talking to people they shouldn't be talking to?
I haven't heard this kind of issue. We had a security issue, for example, Chinese applicants and so on. But most of the issues we challenge in Czech Republic is that nobody is able to define the procurement process, define the ITAs and so on. But the kind of process, kind of problems you described, I didn't encounter them.
Even
it might be because usually if state buys something and there are public procurements, there are certain requirements the companies have to meet. There are some turnover requirements, how many years they have been operated, and state wants to get a trustworthy partner. So there is a quite high turnover level and a couple of years you have to be operated, and new tech companies, they might not meet those rules yet, but from the state's point of view, if you deal with someone and you let them into your accounting system, you want to be sure that nothing is messed up, that everything is correctly, taxes are paid correctly, they are accounted correctly. So you want a trustworthy partner, and I think there is, where is the right balance? There is a question there. And that's sort of an obstacle for new and small companies to enter agreement with the state.
And maybe that's where some of the things we heard, like the innovation hubs, can help, that we heard earlier in the day, providing that kind of intermediary as well. Ian?
Yeah, no, thanks. No, Karen, thanks for the question. I myself wouldn't know why, how EcoSpend kind of won the process. I'm sure they made the best presentation. But what I do know is that it was quite a big thing for them to decide to use a fintech. I think, if you've got, I don't know, if you have various household name brands who are saying this, who are competing for that tender, it's a bigger, it could be seen to be a bigger risk to say, we'll go with this fintech. So a man who knows far more than me may be able to answer best.
Hello, Tim and House, Her Majesty's Government in the UK, so maybe it's useful for me to comment at this point. So I think in the UK, we separate the commercial choices from the kind of direct selection. So we've grown our commercial capability, we've got a Crown Commercial Service, we have Crown representatives that represent with the big tech vendors, and we use them as our voice to the marketplace. I think market engagement is fundamental to be able to get that right and have that kind of without selecting, okay, let's have the conversation, but also have people who are available who aren't directly part of the selection process and the evaluation, and have that commercial acumen working closely with finance and technology colleagues, as we've heard earlier today, together, multidisciplinary teams, and bring them together in a way that's meaningful. That's the trick I think we've been working on for the last probably 8 years, and building that capability in the UK so we can have good kind of processes. And I won't talk on specifics with HMRC, but it is having that engagement up front to help select and horizon scan the capabilities in the marketplace that you can leverage. And I think that's a really important capability that all governments face, to have that in line with their procurement practices in fair and open competition. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, we did a whole separate webinar as well on how do you keep track of kind of fintech and how it's growing and all of these different players in the marketplace as well. Ian,
yeah, sorry, Siobhan. Yeah, I just want to then come back on what we just heard there, which is I didn't want to give the impression this was the first time the UK government had dipped a toe into a fintech. There are other examples. We've possibly heard from one earlier as well. And that's actually quite commonly through the Crown Commercial Service, where I know one headline we had was something like Crown Commercial Service puts fintech to the fore in terms of debt resolution. So the example I was talking about was saying I think it was a relatively big step specifically for HMRC to decide to go with a fintech for that. But obviously there are, I imagine there'll be an increasing number of similar examples. So just to
Thanks, Ian. Any other questions or observations? I'm conscious we've got both Microsoft and Contexa in the room as well, and kind of you do work with governments around the world on kind of payment issues. So are there any things that you've seen where you think actually government could be doing that differently, or they could be kind of bringing in different solutions to help them, especially with some of the preventative stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was referring to new criteria that will enlarge the portfolio of vendors that are eligible to work with government, and social value was that criteria, and actually that this comes from UK, connecting government spending with value creation in the economy. The other aspect refers to decision or a choice, rather, when it comes to platform selection, but also interoperability, and doing the balancing act between the efficiencies that will come with one platform choice to the risk mitigation and vendor dependency on the other spectrum of the place. As long as interoperability is the main criteria, and the openness of the platform, and connecting a wider portfolio of IT partners within the economy, governments will be safe. That's the observation I would have.
Okay, thanks.
Jerome?
Yes, so first, apologies for the unsolicited emails. I think we're probably the one sending those sometimes. And then what I will just say about that is I think usually having those discussions is quite good to learn if the procurement department is in the loop and agrees to that, and the worst thing that can happen is waste your time on something that's not interesting. But that engagement is, I believe, really key, and I feel the pain of big organizations that are locked into long-term contracts because they had to run a very long procurement, and then they're stuck for 5 to 10 years with no innovation and very high costs. And I think that's really something that needs to be avoided for everyone in the future. Now, on the payments, what I will just say is that all those transactions, from an analytical point of view and from a risk management, are really the holy grail of data. So you can tell a lot with those transactions on the behaviors of the companies, and really help the compliance and the fraud detection for the whole process.
Thanks, Jerome. Yeah, Mika.
If I can just add to that. In the tax area, nowadays there are tons of data which are collected by the tax authorities, which are internationally exchanged all around Europe. We have a special directive for it, which introduce every new year. We introduce new and new sets of data which are internationally exchanged, and not only exchange. The directive generally states that we must collect it and then exchange it. I was describing the exchange information on the platforms like Airbnb. We are collecting, according to FATCA, GATCA, and so on, information about the tax, about the amounts of money at the bank accounts. These information are exchanged, analyzed, and so on. Internally, the risk assessment departments, they are working with lots and lots of data. I personally, in my academic part of life, am involved in a kind of minority report project where we are trying to find out if somebody will be potentially VAT fraud in the moment of registration. So these are the possibilities which are not from the client side, from the internal side. As I said, I'm not clear if it belongs to the topic of this conference, but this work with data is also great opportunity, and it's a great change from the past. And about the procurement and so on, I think if the system, if we could at least achieve open enough system to be able to try some new things, and not to have one monolithic system, lots of things could be introduced. For example, we are just now in income tax. We have the possibility for a small entrepreneurs to pay fixed amount of money, and it will be their final duty. Only pay fixed amount, and it will be everything for them. when we had a system which could handle it, we could introduce lots of things which were mentioned here. For example, the automatic collecting of the tax and so on. However, the question is if it's needed, because the same can be achieved by the simple permanent transfer, which the bank can process for many years. I can just write to bank, please send this amount of money every month, and I don't need any fintech solution for it. So, but I don't want to sound like from the past century.
And I do want to come back to Evin on your presentation, because I said it sounded too simple to be true. So I just want to push you a little bit on the going from kind of what can be a really laborious task for a lot of people in terms of returning the tax to what you set out as almost a kind of one click.
Yeah.
Well, no click. It's kind of it's done all on your behalf and 20% gets transferred. So is it genuinely as simple as that? What's the catch there?
That is simple, yeah. Simple as that. So if you make the rules not very complicated, and if you make the rules bearing in mind the technological possibility and technological solutions, you can create a system that is simple as that. And from the user side, from user's point of view, you actually don't have to do anything extra rather than open the bank account, and everything is done for you on the background. And as time goes by, I think especially Estonian people expect everything to happen in the background. They don't even want to do that one click. For instance, you can file your yearly income tax return with one click, and we are discussing how to change the system that they don't have to want to do this one click, that it would be automatically submitted, and if you are not saying that I don't want that. So people expect that everything happens for them, and I think you have to have the will from the government side. So if you want to develop or make a cooperation with fintech companies, it's most possibly that you come up with a situation that new technology meets the legacy software, and to overcome this obstacle you need money, you need time, but if you have a will from the government side, they can find the money, and of course they can give you a time to develop new systems, and then you can make innovative solutions into the government side also. So
that real message we've heard throughout the day, the importance of political leadership.
Yep.
And Mikael, did you want to have, because I'm conscious we've got coffee in a couple of minutes, did you want to come back on that?
Well, I can only support it. I'm always surprised what people can achieve in our closed system with what they have. I'm always imagining what they could achieve if they could try new things in an open environment. So I hope we will get there. That there will be money, motivation, and the technical possibility to do.
Yeah, I can sense your frustration that you want to do more and go even faster. Do we have any other questions from the floor? No? If not, let's say a huge thank you. Really interesting session. Thank you to Evin, thank you to Mikael for those examples. Thanks to Ian for bringing in the UK one as well.